"Night and day I love you," murmured the Apache woman, and the rancher's heart exploded with desire. The sun was just beginning to rise over the rugged plains, casting a golden light across the wide-open land. Birds began to chirp, and the soft breeze carried the smell of earth and grass. In this quiet, untouched part of the West, life moved slowly but with purpose. It was a place where nature ruled, and people had to rely on their strength and wits to survive. Among these lands, a rancher named Daniel lived quietly, tending to his cattle and maintaining his ranch. He was a man of simple habits, honest and hardworking, with broad shoulders and a calm presence that made those around him feel safe. Life for Daniel had always been routine. He woke with the sun, fed his animals, checked the fences, and made sure everything on the ranch was in order. Despite the peace that surrounded him, there was a part of him that felt lonely. He had grown up in this land, loved it with all his heart, but never thought anyone would share it with him. Far to the west, beyond the rolling hills and the streams that cut through the land, lived a woman named Aeon. She was part of the Apache tribe and had grown up learning the ways of her people, the ways of the earth, the animals, and the wind. Aeon was strong, graceful, and independent. From a young age, she had learned to track, to hunt, and to understand the delicate balance of nature. Her life was full of challenges, yet she faced each day with determination and courage. Her heart was gentle, but she had a fire within her, a love for freedom that could not be tamed. Aeon had heard stories of the settlers and the ranchers who had moved into the plains, but she had rarely crossed paths with them. The land was vast, and people were few. Yet destiny has a way of bringing people together when the time is right. On one early morning, as the sun's first rays touched the top of the hills, Daniel was riding his horse along the edge of his property. He was checking the fences after a windy night when he noticed something unusual. A cloud of dust in the distance, moving fast and erratically, caught his attention. Squinting against the bright light, he saw a figure, a woman, running toward the trees near his property. She moved with purpose and confidence, yet something in her gait suggested urgency. Curious and slightly concerned, Daniel guided his horse closer, careful not to startle her. As he approached, he saw her stumble slightly, and without thinking he called out, "Hey, are you all right?" The woman paused, her dark hair catching the sunlight, her eyes sharp and alert. For a moment she studied him silently, unsure of his intentions. Then she nodded and smiled faintly, as if silently saying, "I am fine." Her presence was striking. There was strength in the way she carried herself, and a quiet confidence that made Daniel feel a strange pull toward her. He dismounted and walked closer, keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Do you need help?" he asked gently. She shook her head again, but her eyes betrayed a hint of gratitude. Daniel noticed a small basket she carried, filled with herbs and supplies, likely for her tribe. He realized that she had been traveling a long distance and that the morning journey had been difficult. He offered her some water from his canteen, and after a moment's hesitation, she accepted. The simple gesture broke the barrier between them. For a few minutes, they stood in silence, sharing the quiet beauty of the morning. Daniel could feel the warmth of the sun on his skin, but it was nothing compared to the warmth he felt in her presence. Aeon, too, felt an unfamiliar stir in her heart. She had met people before, but none had been so kind, so gentle, without any demand or expectation. As the day went on, Daniel offered her a place to rest near the small creek that ran through his ranch. She agreed, grateful for the respite. While she sat and rested, Daniel worked to repair a nearby fence, occasionally glancing toward her. There was something mesmerizing about her movements, the way she handled the small tasks with care, the way her eyes observed the world around her. Daniel's heart, which had been quiet for so long, began to feel a flutter he could not ignore. He found himself talking more than usual, telling her about his life, the ranch, and the animals. Aeon listened attentively, occasionally smiling, her presence calming yet invigorating all at once. It was during this quiet afternoon that a sudden commotion startled them. A calf had gotten stuck between two logs near the edge of the creek. Without thinking, Daniel ran toward it, but Aeon was already there. With swift, practiced movements, she helped guide the frightened animal free, showing a courage and skill that impressed Daniel deeply. He watched her handle the situation with ease, realizing that her strength was not just in her body but also in her mind and heart. When the calf was finally safe, Daniel looked at her and said, "You're amazing. I don't know what I would have done without you." Aeon merely smiled, a soft, genuine smile that made his heart beat faster. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they sat by the creek, sharing stories of their lives. Daniel spoke of the long days on the ranch, the quiet nights under the stars, and the challenges he faced in keeping the land alive. Aeon spoke of her tribe, of the wisdom passed down by her ancestors, and the beauty of living in harmony with nature. Though their worlds were different, they found common ground in their respect for the land and the simple joys of life. For the first time, Daniel felt a connection that went beyond friendship or curiosity. He felt a spark, something deeper, something he could not yet name. Aeon, too, felt a stirring in her heart, a gentle warmth that whispered of possibilities she had never imagined. Night fell, and the sky was filled with stars. The sound of crickets and the gentle flow of the creek created a peaceful atmosphere. Daniel offered her a blanket to stay warm, and she accepted with a quiet nod. They sat side by side, watching the stars and listening to the sounds of the night. Words were not necessary, the silence spoke volumes. In that moment, a bond began to form, a bond of trust, admiration, and something more profound. The rancher and the Apache woman, two souls from different worlds, had found each other by chance, and the connection was undeniable. Before parting ways for the night, Daniel walked her to the small shelter he had prepared. "You should rest," he said gently. "Tomorrow will be a long day." Aeon nodded, her eyes reflecting gratitude and something unspoken. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice soft yet clear. As she settled down, Daniel lingered for a moment, feeling a strange reluctance to leave. He realized that meeting her had changed something inside him. She was not just a visitor in his life. She was someone who had awakened a part of him he had long forgotten, the part that longed for companionship, understanding, and love. As the moon rose high in the sky, Daniel returned to his cabin, thinking about the day's events. He could not shake the image of Aeon, the strength in her stance, the kindness in her eyes, and the quiet confidence that drew him in. For her part, Aeon lay beneath the blanket, staring at the stars, feeling a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. She had seen many things in her life, faced countless challenges, yet meeting Daniel had stirred emotions she could not fully understand. The night carried a sense of possibility, of beginnings, and the subtle promise that life could be richer when shared with another soul. In the quiet of the plains, two hearts had met. One was shaped by the struggles and routines of ranch life, the other by the wisdom and resilience of her tribe. Though the world around them was vast and full of uncertainty, that day marked the start of something extraordinary. Neither knew exactly where this encounter would lead, but both felt the undeniable spark of connection. The land around them seemed to embrace this moment, with the wind whispering through the trees and the creek murmuring a gentle lullaby. It was the beginning of a story that neither had expected, a story of courage, discovery, and the slow, beautiful unfolding of love. The next morning, the sun rose over the plains once again, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Daniel woke early, as he always did, and stepped outside his cabin. The air was crisp and fresh, filled with the scent of grass and earth. The ranch was alive with the sounds of the morning, birds calling to one another, cattle lowing in the distance, and the faint rustle of leaves in the gentle wind. Daniel's mind, however, was not on his routine. It was on her, Aeon, the Apache woman who had entered his life the day before and had already changed it in ways he could not describe. Aeon was already up, sitting near the creek where the water flowed softly over the stones. She had wrapped herself in a blanket to ward off the morning chill, and her dark hair glistened in the sunlight. She looked serene, yet alert, her eyes scanning the horizon as if she were listening to secrets the wind carried. Daniel approached quietly, not wanting to disturb her peace, yet feeling a pull that made him eager to speak to her. "Good morning," he said softly, tipping his hat. Aeon looked up and smiled, a gentle, warm smile that made Daniel's chest tighten. "Good morning," she replied. Her voice was calm but carried a subtle strength, like the quiet authority of the land itself. For a few moments, they simply watched the creek together, enjoying the soothing sounds of water and the subtle movements of nature. There was a calmness in these shared silences, a growing understanding that needed no words. Daniel finally spoke, breaking the quiet. "I was thinking, if you want, I could show you around the ranch today. There's a lot you might find interesting and it might make your journey easier." Aeon considered this, her eyes thoughtful. After a pause, she nodded. "I would like that. There is much I wish to understand about your ways." Her tone was respectful but carried curiosity, the kind of curiosity that led to learning and growth. And so, their day began. Daniel led Aeon through the ranch, showing her the layout of the land, the pens for the cattle, and the small vegetable garden he tended. He explained how he managed the animals, repaired fences, and planned for the seasons. Aeon listened attentively, asking questions with intelligence and thoughtfulness. She asked about the ways he cared for the animals, about the weather patterns, and about the land itself. Daniel was impressed by her knowledge of the natural world and the way she connected every detail to the larger balance of life. By midday, they had walked many miles across the ranch. The sun was high and warm, and the two stopped under the shade of a large oak tree. Daniel had brought some bread and cheese, and they shared a simple meal. As they ate, they spoke of their lives in more personal ways. Daniel told her stories of his childhood, of the challenges he faced maintaining the ranch, and the quiet moments he cherished alone. Aeon spoke of her tribe, the teachings she had learned from her elders, and the traditions that guided her people. She told him about the lessons of patience, resilience, and respect for the earth. There was a growing sense of connection between them, a sense that their lives, though different, could complement one another. Daniel admired her strength, intelligence, and calm courage. Aeon admired his kindness, his honesty, and the way he respected the land. Each conversation, each shared glance, built a bridge between their worlds, a bridge made of mutual respect and curiosity. After lunch, Daniel suggested they check on a group of cattle grazing near a distant hill. Aeon agreed, and they set out together. Along the way, Daniel noticed how skilled she was at moving quietly, observing the environment and reading the subtle signs in nature. She pointed out tracks, plants, and small changes in the wind, teaching him to notice details he had often overlooked. He realized that she had a depth of understanding about the world that even he, with all his years on the land, could learn from. When they reached the hill, they saw that a few calves had wandered too close to a rocky ledge. Daniel began to worry, but Aeon calmly assessed the situation. With precise movements and gentle commands, she guided the calves back to safety, showing a combination of patience and authority that left Daniel in awe. "You have a gift," he said, shaking his head with admiration. "I don't think I could have done that so calmly." Aeon smiled, a soft expression that spoke of modesty. "It is not a gift," she said simply. "It is learning to listen, to understand, and to act without fear." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest at her words, a sense of admiration that went beyond simple respect. He realized he was drawn to her not just because of her beauty or strength, but because of her wisdom, her courage, and her calm presence. As the afternoon passed, they began to share small tasks on the ranch. Aeon helped Daniel repair a broken fence, her hands steady and confident as she worked alongside him. Daniel noticed how her movements were precise, how she adapted quickly to new challenges, and how she handled every task with care. He began to feel a deep admiration for her, an emotion that was both new and exciting. For her part, Aeon appreciated Daniel's patience in teaching her new skills and his willingness to listen to her advice. She felt a sense of comfort in his presence, a feeling of safety and trust that she rarely experienced with strangers. By evening, the sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. Daniel suggested they take a short walk to a nearby hill to watch the sunset. They walked side by side, their steps in rhythm, the silence between them comfortable and filled with meaning. When they reached the top of the hill, the view took their breath away. The vast plain stretched out in every direction, the rivers winding like silver threads through the green land. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows and golden light over everything. They sat on a rock, watching the sky change colors. Daniel spoke quietly. "I never realized how beautiful it can be up here. Sometimes I get so caught up in the work that I forget to look around." Aeon nodded, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. "Beauty is everywhere," she said softly. "It is in the land, in the wind, in the water. You only need to see it." Her words resonated with Daniel, making him see his world in a new way. As darkness approached, they made their way back to the ranch. Daniel built a small fire near the cabin, and they sat together, sharing warmth against the cool night air. He offered her some food and water, and they spoke of their hopes, dreams, and the things that mattered most to them. Daniel realized that her presence brought a sense of calm and joy he had not felt in years. Aeon felt the same, noticing how his simple acts of kindness reflected a deep and genuine heart. Before parting for the night, Daniel said, "You've changed my view of this land. I feel like I see it for the first time." Aeon smiled gently, her eyes reflecting both thoughtfulness and warmth. "Perhaps it is not the land that has changed," she said softly. "Perhaps it is the heart that sees it." Daniel's heart skipped a beat at her words. There was a meaning in them that went beyond their simple conversation, a meaning that hinted at deeper emotions forming between them. That night, as Aeon lay beneath the stars in the small shelter Daniel had prepared, she thought about the day they had spent together. She had faced challenges, learned new things, and yet felt a connection that was growing stronger by the hour. She realized that Daniel was not just a kind man or a hard worker. He was someone who respected her, someone who could see beyond differences and truly understand her. She felt a gentle warmth in her heart, a feeling that was new and exciting, yet not frightening. Daniel, too, lay awake in his cabin thinking about her. He thought about the way she moved, the calm confidence she carried, and the way she spoke with wisdom and clarity. He realized that his admiration had grown into something more profound, something he could not yet name, but which filled him with hope and anticipation. For the first time in a long while, he felt that life might hold unexpected joys, that companionship and understanding could exist even in the most unlikely circumstances. As sleep finally came, both of them carried a sense of anticipation for the next day. The bond they were forming was quiet but strong, built on respect, shared experiences, and a growing curiosity about one another. Though neither knew what the future held, they both understood that their meeting was significant, a beginning of something that could grow into a lasting connection. The plains lay quiet under the moon, the wind whispering through the trees, carrying the promise of new adventures. In the heart of the vast land, two souls, one shaped by the ways of the ranch, the other by the wisdom of her people, had begun a journey together. A journey of trust, understanding, and the slow unfolding of a connection that had the power to change both their lives forever. The days passed quickly on the ranch, and the bond between Daniel and Aeon grew stronger with each shared moment. They had begun to understand each other in ways that words could not always capture. Yet, as their connection deepened, the world around them began to present challenges they could not ignore. Life in the plains was beautiful but harsh, and love, even in its purest form, was never without trials. One morning, Daniel woke to the sound of restless cattle. The wind had picked up overnight, carrying dust and debris across the ranch. He hurried outside, worried that the stormy weather might have caused damage. As he ran toward the pasture, he saw that a few of the cattle had broken through a weakened section of the fence. Panic rose in his chest, but before he could act, Aeon appeared beside him. Without hesitation, she assessed the situation, her sharp eyes noticing every detail. "We need to guide them back carefully," she said calmly. "If we scare them, they will run farther." Together, they worked to round up the animals. Daniel was impressed by her ability to stay calm under pressure. She moved with precision, speaking softly to the frightened cattle while he assisted, guiding them back to safety. By the time the last cow was secured, their clothes were dirty, their hands scratched by branches, and their faces streaked with sweat. Yet, there was a sense of triumph in their teamwork. Daniel looked at Aeon with admiration. "I don't know what I would do without you," he said, breathing heavily. Aeon only smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We make a good team," she said simply. Despite their shared success, the day carried tension. News had spread through the nearby town about Daniel's growing friendship with Aeon. Some townsfolk viewed her with suspicion because she was Apache, and Daniel had heard whispers of disapproval. It made him uneasy, but he refused to let it affect his judgment or his feelings. Aeon noticed the change in his demeanor and gently took his hand. "Do not worry about their words," she said softly. "We cannot control what others think, only how we act." Her calmness was reassuring, but Daniel could not shake the unease that lingered. Later that afternoon, Daniel invited Aeon to explore a small forested area near the edge of his property. He thought it would be a peaceful way to take their minds off the growing tension in town. The trees were tall and ancient, their branches creating a green canopy overhead. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground. Birds sang from the branches, and the sound of a nearby stream added to the serenity of the forest. Walking together, they spoke of dreams, hopes, and fears. Aeon shared stories of her tribe's history, the lessons passed down through generations, and the importance of honoring one's heritage. Daniel listened, fascinated by the depth of her knowledge and the wisdom in her words. He realized that their differences did not divide them. They complemented each other, offering new perspectives and insights into life. He shared his own experiences growing up on the ranch, the hardships he had faced, and the pride he felt in maintaining his family's land. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden rustling in the underbrush. A wild coyote emerged, eyeing them cautiously. Daniel instinctively reached for a nearby stick, but Aeon stepped forward with calm authority. She spoke softly, her voice steady and confident, and the coyote, sensing no threat, eventually turned and disappeared into the trees. Daniel was amazed at her bravery and connection with the natural world. "You truly are remarkable," he said, his voice filled with awe. Aeon only shrugged modestly. "I have learned to respect all creatures," she replied. "Fear serves no purpose when understanding is present." As the day wore on, they returned to the ranch, feeling a mixture of relief and satisfaction from their adventures. But the challenges were not over. One evening, a messenger from the town arrived with troubling news. A dispute over land boundaries had escalated, and some of the townsfolk threatened to take matters into their own hands. Daniel knew he had to act carefully to protect his property while avoiding unnecessary conflict. He shared the news with Aeon, who listened attentively, her eyes reflecting concern. "We will handle this together," she said firmly. "We must remain calm and think carefully. Anger will only make the situation worse." Her words strengthened Daniel's resolve. He realized that her wisdom was not only valuable in moments of nature, but also in navigating the complexities of human relationships. Together, they planned a course of action that prioritized diplomacy and respect, hoping to resolve the dispute peacefully. In the days that followed, they faced prejudice and skepticism from some members of the community. Whispers and sideways glances reminded them that not everyone approved of their growing closeness. Daniel felt frustration and sadness at the unfair judgments, while Aeon remained steady, offering quiet encouragement. She reminded him that their bond was stronger than the opinions of others, and that true respect and understanding could overcome ignorance. Her words were a source of comfort, and Daniel drew strength from her unwavering support. Despite the external pressures, their relationship deepened. They spent time together in quiet moments, repairing fences, tending to animals, and sharing meals under the open sky. Each day, they learned more about each other's values, dreams, and fears. They laughed together, celebrated small victories, and comforted each other during difficult moments. These shared experiences created a foundation of trust and understanding that no external force could easily shake. One afternoon, a storm approached unexpectedly, dark clouds rolling across the plains and winds picking up with increasing intensity. Daniel and Aeon worked side by side to secure the animals and reinforce the fences. The storm tested their resilience, requiring quick thinking, coordination, and courage. At one point, a fence post broke, and a young calf wandered dangerously close to a riverbank. Daniel and Aeon acted without hesitation, guiding the calf to safety. Their teamwork was seamless, their trust in each other absolute. By the time the storm passed, they were exhausted but grateful for their combined strength and determination. As evening settled, the sky cleared, revealing a canopy of stars more brilliant than they had ever seen. They sat together on a hill, watching the constellations and sharing a quiet sense of awe. Daniel spoke softly, "I never thought life could be this full. Meeting you has changed everything." Aeon smiled, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "And you have shown me the beauty of connection," she said. "Even in a world full of challenges, we can find moments of peace and joy together." Their bond had been tested by both nature and society, but each challenge had only strengthened it. They had learned to rely on each other, to communicate without words, and to trust in their shared instincts and understanding. The trials they faced were not easy, but they had shown them the depth of their feelings and the strength of their partnership. That night, as they returned to the ranch, Daniel prepared a small fire and they sat together, warmed by its glow. The events of the past days lingered in their minds, but they also felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. They had faced adversity together and had emerged stronger. Daniel looked at Aeon, realizing that his admiration had grown into something deeper, something that could no longer be ignored. Aeon, too, felt a growing warmth in her heart, a quiet certainty that their connection was special and worth nurturing. Before parting for the night, Daniel took her hand gently. "No matter what happens tomorrow," he said softly, "I am grateful for you. For your strength, your wisdom, and your presence." Aeon's eyes softened and she squeezed his hand. "And I am grateful for you," she replied. "For your kindness, your patience, and your willingness to see me as I am." In that moment, words became unnecessary, as their hearts spoke in a language that transcended differences, fear, and uncertainty. As they lay down to rest, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the promise of challenges yet to come, but also the hope of enduring love and understanding. The plains, vast and untamed, had witnessed the growth of a connection that was both fragile and strong, a bond that would continue to face trials but would endure through courage, respect, and unwavering trust. The next days would bring new challenges, prejudices to confront, fears to overcome, and difficult decisions to make. But Daniel and Aeon had learned that together, they could face anything. The trials they encountered had not weakened their bond. They had strengthened it, forging a connection built on trust, admiration, and the quiet, unspoken knowledge that their hearts were intertwined. In the vastness of the plains, amidst storms and whispers of doubt, they had found a truth that would guide them forward. Love, respect, and courage were stronger than fear and prejudice. And though the road ahead was uncertain, they were ready to face it side by side, their hearts bound by a growing, unbreakable connection. The sun had barely begun to rise over the plains when Daniel woke, feeling the quiet anticipation of a new day. After the challenges of the past days, he knew that today would be different. There was a sense in the air, a feeling that the bond between him and Aeon had grown stronger, deeper, and more undeniable. He dressed quickly and stepped outside, his mind wandering to her, wondering what she was thinking as the morning light touched the earth. Aeon, meanwhile, was already awake near the small creek where she had chosen to rest. She had wrapped herself in a blanket, yet the chill of the early morning did not bother her. Her thoughts were filled with Daniel and the days they had spent together. She realized that she had come to trust him deeply, to admire not only his strength and kindness, but also his unwavering honesty. There was a warmth in her heart, a gentle stirring of feelings that she had not expected, yet could no longer ignore. Daniel approached her, holding 2 mugs of warm tea he had prepared. "Good morning," he said softly, offering one to her. "I thought you might like something warm." Aeon accepted it with a small smile, her eyes meeting his. "Thank you," she said, her voice gentle yet filled with sincerity. They sat together by the creek, the water flowing softly nearby, and for a moment words were unnecessary. The quiet shared between them spoke volumes, conveying trust, understanding, and the quiet blossoming of emotion. As the morning progressed, Daniel suggested they go for a walk along the ridge overlooking the plains. The hills rolled gently beneath the sky, and the view stretched for miles. Daniel had always loved the landscape, but now, seeing it with Aeon, it seemed even more beautiful. As they walked side by side, he felt the need to speak what had been growing in his heart. "Aeon," he began slowly, unsure of how to put his feelings into words, "these past days being with you has changed something in me. I feel something I haven't felt before." Aeon glanced at him, her eyes softening with understanding. She could sense the sincerity in his voice, the depth of his emotions. "Daniel," she replied quietly, "I feel the same. Being with you, it has awakened feelings I thought I would never experience. There is a connection between us, one that cannot be ignored." The words hung in the air, delicate yet powerful, carrying the weight of truth and the promise of deeper emotions. They continued to walk, their hands brushing occasionally, each touch sending a quiet shiver through their hearts. They spoke of their fears, of the challenges they faced, and of the hopes they held for the future. Daniel admitted his concern about the disapproval of some townsfolk, and his worry about the difficulties of blending 2 very different lives. Aeon listened patiently, offering comfort and reassurance. "The path may not be easy," she said, "but love and understanding can overcome obstacles. We must trust ourselves and each other." As the afternoon sun rose higher, they returned to the ranch. Daniel had prepared a small area near the cabin, where they could rest and share a meal together. The smell of fresh bread and roasted vegetables filled the air, and for a moment, the world seemed perfect in its simplicity. They ate together, laughing softly at small stories and memories, feeling the ease and comfort of companionship. Every glance, every shared smile, strengthened the quiet bond between them. Later, Daniel led Aeon to the pasture, where he had arranged a small surprise. A circle of wildflowers had been gathered, bright and colorful against the green grass. "I thought you might like this," he said, his voice gentle. Aeon's eyes widened in surprise, and a soft smile spread across her face. "It is beautiful," she whispered, touching the petals delicately. Daniel watched her, his heart swelling with emotion. He realized that he wanted to express everything he felt, to tell her how deeply she had touched his heart. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land, Daniel took a deep breath. He looked at Aeon, her face glowing in the golden light, and spoke from his heart. Aeon, I cannot hide it any longer. Night and day I think of you. I love you. The words, spoken softly but with complete sincerity, seemed to fill the space between them. Aeon's eyes shone, and for a moment she was silent, letting the weight of his words sink in. Then, with a soft murmur, she replied, "And I love you, Daniel. Night and day, my heart is yours." The confession brought a sense of relief, joy, and quiet wonder. They sat together, holding hands, feeling the warmth of connection that went beyond words. It was a moment of pure honesty, of emotions laid bare, and a turning point in their journey. Both knew that life would still bring challenges, but this declaration strengthened their resolve to face them together. As night fell, the stars filled the sky, bright and uncountable. Daniel and Aeon sat by a small fire, sharing stories and dreams under the vast expanse of the universe. They spoke of the future, imagining a life where their worlds could merge, where their differences could become strengths rather than obstacles. They dreamed of a home filled with respect, love, and understanding, a place where their hearts could be free and their bond could flourish. The next morning, Daniel suggested they begin working together on a project that had been on his mind for some time. He wanted to build a small garden and expand the vegetable patch, a place where they could both contribute and share the rewards. Aeon agreed enthusiastically, offering her knowledge of the earth and the plants that would thrive best in the soil. Together they dug, planted, and nurtured the garden, laughing at small mishaps and celebrating small victories. The simple act of working side by side became a symbol of their growing partnership, of how their lives could intertwine with patience, care, and mutual respect. In the days that followed, their connection continued to deepen. They shared quiet mornings watching the sunrise, long afternoons exploring the ranch and nearby forests, and evenings filled with stories, laughter, and gentle conversation. Daniel learned to see the world through Aeon's eyes, noticing details and patterns he had never considered before. Aeon learned to appreciate the rhythms of ranch life, the hard work, and the dedication it took to maintain the land. Together, they created a balance, each bringing strengths and wisdom that complemented the other. Yet, despite the joy and closeness, there were still challenges to face. The town's whispers continued, and some families expressed disapproval of their growing closeness. Daniel felt frustration at the prejudice, but Aeon reminded him of the importance of patience and understanding. "We cannot control others," she said calmly. "We can only act with honesty and integrity. Let our hearts guide us, not fear or anger." Her words comforted Daniel, giving him the courage to face judgment with dignity and calm. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Daniel and Aeon walked to a hill overlooking the ranch. The wind carried the soft scent of wildflowers and fresh grass, and the distant sound of a creek added to the serenity of the moment. Daniel took Aeon's hands in his, looking into her eyes. "We have faced so much already," he said softly, "but I want to face everything with you. I want to build a life together no matter the challenges." Aeon's eyes filled with emotion. "And I want the same," she replied. "We may face obstacles, but together we can find a way forward. My heart is yours, Daniel, and I trust it will guide us." The stars appeared one by one as night settled over the plains, a vast canopy that seemed to celebrate their union. They sat together in silence, feeling the warmth of the fire and the even greater warmth of their shared hearts. In that quiet, magical moment, Daniel and Aeon understood that love was not just a feeling. It was a choice, a commitment, and a source of strength. Their confessions had brought them closer than ever, creating a bond that could endure trials, hardships, and the uncertainties of life. As they returned to the cabin, hand in hand, they felt a quiet sense of peace. The world around them remained vast and unpredictable, but within the circle of their shared connection, they had found something unshakable. They had faced challenges, admitted their hearts, and discovered a love that was steady, deep, and enduring. And though the future would bring new decisions and responsibilities, they were ready to face it together, guided by honesty, respect, and the knowledge that their hearts had found a true companion. That night, as the wind whispered through the trees and the plains lay under the silver glow of the moon, Daniel and Aeon slept with the quiet assurance that they had chosen each other. Their hearts were intertwined, their emotions confessed, and their path together illuminated by the warmth of love and trust. The trials of the past had strengthened them, and the promises of the future awaited, full of hope, courage, and the slow, beautiful unfolding of a shared life. The sun rose slowly over the plains, casting a warm, golden light across the rolling hills. Daniel woke early, as he always did, but this morning felt different. There was a quiet excitement in the air, a feeling that something new and important was beginning. For weeks he and Aeon had shared countless moments, challenges faced together, fears spoken, and love confessed. Now the next step in their journey was approaching, and Daniel felt ready to embrace it fully. Aeon, meanwhile, was already awake near the small creek that had become a favorite place for reflection. She looked at the water, watching it ripple and dance in the morning sunlight. Her thoughts were filled with Daniel, and a gentle warmth spread through her heart. She realized how deeply their lives had intertwined, how much she relied on his presence, and how naturally he had become a part of her world. There was a sense of peace, a quiet certainty that their bond could endure anything life presented. After breakfast, Daniel suggested they spend the morning preparing the land together. There was work to be done on the ranch, repairs to fences, tending to the garden and checking on the cattle. Aeon agreed eagerly, and they set to work, side by side, their movements in harmony. As they labored, they laughed at small mishaps and celebrated successes, finding joy in the simplest tasks. Each shared moment reinforced their connection, reminding them that love was as much about everyday life as it was about grand gestures. By midday, they paused under the shade of a large oak tree to rest. Daniel looked at Aeon, noticing how the sunlight caught in her hair, how her eyes reflected both intelligence and kindness. He realized that he wanted their bond to be recognized not just privately, but openly, to show the world that their love was real and steadfast. Aeon, he began carefully, I want us to build a life together, one where we can face challenges, celebrate joys, and share everything. But I also want to do it in a way that honors both our worlds. Aeon listened attentively, her eyes softening. I want the same, Daniel, she said. We must respect our differences, yes, but we can also create something new. Our life can be a bridge between our worlds, a place of understanding and harmony. The sincerity in her voice touched Daniel deeply. He knew that they were ready to face the next chapter together, with courage and commitment. In the following days, they began taking steps to unite their lives more formally. They worked on the ranch together, planning improvements and sharing responsibilities. Aeon taught Daniel new ways to care for the land, using knowledge passed down through her tribe. Daniel shared his own techniques, showing her how to manage the ranch efficiently. The blending of their skills created a partnership that was strong, balanced, and respectful. Both felt a sense of pride and joy in the work they accomplished together. As their life together began to take shape, they also faced external pressures. Some townsfolk continued to express disapproval of their relationship, and there were moments of tension when prejudices surfaced. Daniel and Aeon approached these challenges with patience and calm. They addressed concerns with honesty, demonstrating through their actions the respect, love, and integrity that defined their bond. Slowly, the people around them began to see that their connection was genuine, rooted in trust and care rather than mere attraction. One afternoon, they decided to host a small gathering at the ranch, inviting friends from both Daniel's community and Aon's tribe. The purpose was simple: to celebrate life, build understanding, and show that unity was possible despite differences. As guests arrived, there was initial hesitation and curiosity, but Daniel and Aon greeted everyone warmly, bridging gaps with respect and kindness. Stories were shared, meals were enjoyed, and laughter echoed across the plains. By the end of the day, walls of prejudice had begun to crumble, replaced by recognition of the strength and sincerity of their partnership. In the midst of these celebrations, Daniel and Aon found quiet moments for themselves. They would walk hand in hand along the creek, sit together watching the sunset, or work side by side in the garden. These moments reinforced their bond, reminding them of the simple joys of companionship and mutual support. Each day brought new experiences, yet the core of their relationship, the trust, respect, and love they shared, remained constant and unshakable. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Daniel led Aon to a hill overlooking the ranch. The wind carried the gentle scent of wildflowers, and the distant sound of the creek added to the serenity of the moment. Daniel took Aon's hands in his voice soft but filled with conviction. "Aon, these past weeks and months have shown me what life can be when shared with someone who understands and supports you. I want to continue this journey together openly, without fear or hesitation. Will you join me in building a future, a life where our hearts and our worlds are united?" Aon's eyes glistened with emotion. She felt the depth of his sincerity, the unwavering commitment in his gaze. "Yes, Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. "I want nothing more than to walk this path with you. Together, we can face anything. Together, we can create a life full of love, respect, and understanding." Their hearts beat in quiet harmony as they embraced, feeling the certainty and joy of a love that had weathered trials and grown stronger with each passing day. In the following weeks, they took steps to solidify their life together. They repaired and expanded the ranch, creating a home that reflected both their values and strengths. Aon shared traditions from her tribe, incorporating ceremonies and teachings that honored her heritage. Daniel contributed his knowledge of ranch life, ensuring the land thrived and provided for them. Their combined efforts created a space that was both practical and filled with warmth, a symbol of their shared journey and commitment. Neighbors and friends who had once doubted their union began to recognize the authenticity of their relationship. Acts of kindness, patience, and collaboration demonstrated that their partnership was built on more than emotion. It was rooted in trust, respect, and shared responsibility. Slowly but surely, the community accepted them, and the barriers of prejudice began to fade. Daniel and Aon had not only strengthened their bond, but also inspired understanding and harmony around them. One quiet morning, as the sun rose over the plains, Daniel and Aon stood together on the hill where they had confessed their love. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a sense of peace and possibility. They looked out over the land, the ranch, and the horizon beyond. "We have faced much," Daniel said softly, "but I believe we are ready for whatever comes next." Aon nodded, her hand resting in his. "Yes," she replied. "Together, we can build a life that honors both our hearts and our worlds. Our journey is just beginning, and I feel ready for it with you by my side." As the months passed, their life flourished. The garden grew abundant with vegetables and herbs, the cattle were healthy and well cared for, and their home radiated warmth and joy. Daniel and Aon continued to learn from each other, blending traditions, skills, and values in ways that strengthened both their relationship and the community around them. Each day brought new lessons, laughter, and moments of quiet reflection. They also took time to mentor younger members of the community, teaching lessons of cooperation, respect, and understanding. Aeon shared her knowledge of the land, wildlife, and traditions, while Daniel shared his experience of ranching, responsibility, and care for the earth. Their combined wisdom created a sense of continuity, passing knowledge to those who would carry it forward. One evening, as they sat by a small fire near the creek, Daniel looked at Aeon and smiled. "We have come a long way," he said softly, "and yet I feel like our story is only beginning." Aeon reached out, taking his hand gently. "Yes," she replied. "The land, the skies, the rivers, they have witnessed our journey. And now they will witness the life we build together, full of hope, love, and understanding." The plains stretched endlessly around them, the wind carrying the quiet songs of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves. Daniel and Aeon sat together in silence, feeling the strength of their connection and the promise of a future built on trust, respect, and enduring love. Their hearts were intertwined, their lives united, and their spirits aligned. The challenges they had faced had only made their bond stronger, and the choices they had made had ensured that their love would endure. As night fell, the stars shone brilliantly above, a testament to the vastness of the world and the beauty of life. Daniel and Aeon, hand in hand, gazed up at the sky, feeling a sense of harmony and fulfillment. They had faced trials, overcome doubts, and embraced their love openly and fearlessly. Now, with hearts full and spirits aligned, they were ready to face the future together, knowing that whatever came their way, they would do so as partners, friends, and soulmates. The wind whispered through the trees, the creek sang its quiet song, and the plains stretched endlessly in every direction. Daniel and Aeon had found not only each other but a life filled with purpose, joy, and love. Together they had created a home, a bond, and a story that would endure for years to come. And as they looked at the horizon hand in hand, they knew that night and day, their hearts would remain forever connected.